Hello and welcome to another episode of the Leo Alves podcast. And in today's podcast episode, I have a repeat guest with me, Susan Niebergall. She was back on the podcast in about just before, I think, summer 22 or just before the summer was about to start. And it was a lovely conversation. And, we've spoken a few times since then as well. And I thought, you know what, let me get Susan back on the podcast because, she's great at what she does and very easy to speak to as well. And we were recently speaking about a book, which our books, which I think we can go into a little bit more detail on, but maybe we can do a brief introduction as to who you are, just in case someone didn't listen to that other episode or hasn't come across your stuff before, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Great to be back, Leo. Always good to see you. Yeah, so I'm Susan Niebergall. I own Susan Niebergall Fitness, and I am coaching the inner circle with Jordan Syatt. And yeah, I am just a now I have to say 64-year-old. I just turned 64 in May. So 64-year-old woman who, like many women, struggled to lose weight majority of my life. I was never obese, but I always had weight to lose. And I was one of those yo-yo dieters. And no one special really, but just decided in my mid 50s, enough is enough. And had started taking accountability for what I was doing and what I wasn't doing. I think maybe even more importantly, and surrounded myself with the right people and just put in the effort, and all of a sudden everything changes, not only how I look but how I think, how I feel. So my whole message now is just to get out there and let anyone know it's never too late to change, ever. And I changed everything, my mindset, everything, in my 50s. And I think that's really important to stress, because so many people feel like, yeah, you're kind of done for at that point, like it is what it is. And that's just not true. So I want to let everyone know that you can do whatever you want to do. It's not going to be easy, but you can definitely do it. I think it's an important message to get out, because we're so quick to blame other things for why we can't be successful. When really we control the not only the narrative, but we can control the outcome too. And so that's great news. So that's kind of my message out there. I wrote a book called Fit at Any Age. It's Never Too Late. And we have been talking about our mutual books here. And that's why the subtitle is what it is. It's Never Too Late, because I truly believe that it's never too late. So, yeah, that's kind of my mission right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people have taken inspiration from that because it is a common theme as people grow older that they do start to believe that there's not really much they can do when there is a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure, like I said, a lot of people has have drawn inspiration from that. There's two things that I wanted to that come to my mind actually from what you everything you've just said. So first of all, you used to be a high school teacher, right?
Middle school. Well,
Middle school.
actually, I taught high school too for a while, right out of college. I taught high school band right out of college. And then I started working on my master's in school counseling and went right from being a music teacher to a school counselor, which is where I spent most of my educational career, 33 years of it.
Wow, and I'm sure you that must have transferred like a lot into how like just being a teacher has helped you a lot in being a coach.
It was a seamless transition. It's so interesting because I already talked to people for a living, right? I mean, I talked to kids, I talked to their parents. We had to problem solve. I had to validate how they were feeling. You learn how to talk to people, make them feel heard, and look what, once you learn how to do that and someone feels heard and appreciated and all those things, then all of a sudden they start believing in themselves. I mean, it's just this whole positive thing that starts to happen. And I already did that for a living. So I feel like when I came into the fitness space, that a lot of people are saying that was the hardest part for them, is being able to communicate with their clients and teaching them how to do movements, teaching them about nutrition, all the things. I already knew how to do that. What I went into fitness having to learn was all the technical stuff, you know. So I feel like I had a leg up, because I feel like it was a perfect marriage of occupations. I was a school counselor at the time while I was getting certified as a trainer. And I'm just like, wow, this is like I mean, it's a great marriage, right? Because you already are doing one skill set, you're just picking up another skill set.
Yeah, and I feel like one of at least one of the things I overlooked when I first started is I think how important it is to speak to people and how that plays a massive role. Whereas it's not necessarily just about what you know and everything you know about training and nutrition. A lot of it is to do with yeah, just communication, psychology as
Hmm.
well. Which, like you said, what was it, over 30 years of doing that on a almost daily basis, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it helped a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's one thing that I know you've heard Jordan say this a million times, but it's so true is that people don't hire you because of your certification. I mean, I don't know if I've ever had anybody really ask me about my certification or whatever. They're hiring you because of you, and when I was before I was certified and I would belong to different gyms and I always liked to work with a trainer at the gym. And I would always spend a lot of time observing them and I would observe how they interacted with somebody. That was super important to me. And that's how I picked trainers to work with. The ones that were really involved, were really engaged, not the ones that were just standing there watching somebody perform 8 reps of a Bulgarian split squat or something. The ones that were helping them with their technique, with their breathing, with all the things. And I think that just learning how to deal with people in that way and teach them and respond to them and listen to them and speak to them. That's kind of why people hire you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I agree. Yeah, for sure. One thing that we mentioned as well, just well, you mentioned before we just started a call, but then I was like, you know what, let's leave it for the
Yeah,
call.
yeah.
That was the subject of our books. So yeah, you're working on the book right now, aren't you?
Well,
Or you have an
I've
idea?
written one book and then I decided I've had this thought of doing another book for a while, but I just put it on the back burner. I didn't even really think about it because I really wasn't I mean, I was burned out of it, for a while. So I have the kind of rough little tidbits of a second book. And I've recently just kind of got the fire a little bit lit again. This one's gonna be a slow process because I'm not all in on it yet. Like I don't feel the same like I did with my other book, like I was all in on that one. So I am not setting any timelines or guidelines for this one. I'm just letting because I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be something I dread. I don't want it to be something, that is awful. I want it to be fun for me because I don't have to do this. You know what I mean? So I want it to be fun. And it's going to be very different. My first book was my story. Basically, it was you know, kind of a biography or a memoir, I guess they call it a memoir. And it was just my story of the struggles I had for decades and then how I turned it around in my 50s and how that affected not only me, but my business and how my business took off because of that, all the things. And that one was probably a little bit easier to write because it was my story, right? My life. The next one is going to be very different. It's going to be I like, I don't even know how to describe it. Little chunks of information all around, all through the book. So, like, I think the title is going to be something around um, 52. I don't 52. I'm going to use the word nuggets. 52 nuggets to help improve your life, fitness, live longer, blah blah blah. Something like that. So it's going to be short, little, digestible. 52 short, digestible little bits of info regarding nutrition, regarding training, regarding mindset to keep you healthy, happy, and have a functional life, for the duration. And hopefully an easy read, probably not super long. And I did 50, I was going to do 365, like one a day. And I'm like, no, no, too
Yeah.
many. So did one a week, so somebody could say, okay, this week I'm going to do this. I want to read about this one and learn about this thing, whatever that thing is. And just kind of people could pace themselves that way. People could do however many they want to just read the whole thing, whatever, but kind of like a little handbook kind of thing.
I like that idea. Yeah, very cool. Maybe it's been, I don't know if it's been done before, but I like it. And it's not definitely something I haven't.
I've seen some books that have something kind of similar. Um, but I got so many comments back on my first book about it was an easy read on purpose because I don't speak with big fancy words. I don't write with big fancy words. It was like me talking. And so it's very easy to read. People could polish it off in a day or two, something like that, which is great. Exactly kind of what I wanted. This one will probably be still an easy read, but maybe not quite as easy as the other one, because it'll have more stuff in it, more like technical stuff in it, I guess. But yeah, it'll be a different format. So yeah, we'll see. But again, I'm saying this out loud that I'm doing it, but yeah, it'll be a while. So don't hold your breath yet.
Well, if you
How
do,
about you? I want to hear about yours.
yeah, it's good. So obviously it's the first time I'm ever doing this. Um, so I'm learning like just everything for the first time. And I wanted to say as well, thank you very much for having that call with me about, I think it was a few months ago now.
Yeah.
Just for context for the listener, Susan just basically took her time out to jump on a call with me. I think it was for like half an hour. And we just spoke about just a bunch I should be aware of when it comes to putting together and publishing and putting a book out there. And yeah, I wanted to say thank you so much for that
Of
because
course.
you didn't need to do that. But yeah, that was very nice of you. And it helped a lot. It gave me more clarity. I still need to buy the IBSM number.
Hmm.
So there's still a few things I need to do, but it's pretty much done. I need to. You sent me like a slideshow the other day as well that I think you picked up from somewhere, and it had like
Hmm.
more instructions on. And yeah, there's a lot I still haven't done on there, like a line editor or and a proofreader and an editor, but. Yeah, it also depends on my budget because I wasn't planning to spend too much on this either. So I have to like really review everything. I did send
Yeah.
it to one editor on Fiverr and she gave me her feedback and she said it looks good. She gave me like one or two tips for it because she said that because one thing I did was throughout the book, it's just a book about fat loss for the everyday person, very easy
Hmm.
read. Like you said, no massively long words, no
Yeah.
overcomplications in the subject. It's just like keeping everything brief that you should pretty much know if you're going to lose fat for the first time. And, isn't it's not what you'd really do for a living either. You just want to be a healthier version of yourself. And throughout it, like I do like a lot of, I share like a bunch of personal stories that bring the example to life a bit more, which I think always help
I love that.
the idea hit home more, whether it's like personal stories with myself or like my one-to-one online fitness members from different points within my career and or like from the different countries I was living in. Um, just throughout my life. And she was just like, "Oh, I would really love it if I could see more of those in certain sections." And then I reread it and I was like, "Yeah, you know what? Like sometimes it goes for long times in the book without one, and let me go back and add in a few more because I had taken a long break from it as well while she was looking at it." And then when I got back to it, I was like, "Oh, I've got a few new ideas for it anyway." So that was probably like the biggest thing. And now I have a friend of mine proofreading it. I have another coach who I'm really close to, like a close friend of mine who is also going to like look at the strength training section because there's a strength training section in there, and I would just want to hear his opinion on it because he's pretty
Hmm.
good at like everything strength training, and just see if he's like, yeah, this is good stuff here, and yeah. So once that's done, I also got I think it'll be pretty much close to being to going like to start being looking at publishing it because again I just want to keep it fun. I don't want to have like too many back and forths with it. I think with by the time three or four people have looked at the whole thing, I think that should be okay.
Yeah.
And my uncle who has been creating and publishing comics for like 25 years part-time,
Mm.
um, he also said he'll potentially do some illustrations for it, and he's got like a very unique style of art. So hopefully
Is he
that
going
goes.
to do the cover?
I don't know. He's definitely going to do the illustrations, like a few illustrations within. I'm not going to do many, but there were just like some points, like for example, like eating ideas, like yeah, just like some like nutrition approaches where or analogies that I give throughout the book where I'm like, oh, an image would be really good to go with this, just for the point to hit home a bit more. And so he's gonna like do some illustrations. At least that's the plan. We'll see how that goes, and that's really cool as well. And maybe he'll do the cover. I don't know. Or my wife. My wife does graphic design as well. So
Oh,
I
oh,
have
great.
yeah. So I have some options like really close to home with two people who do this for a living.
Yes, you do.
So
That's amazing.
that help. Yeah, it's nice. And like people, and of course because they know me, they know like how I'm like, and maybe more or less what I'm looking for, and what I'm kind of standing
Yeah,
for. So that I think that helps a lot as well. Um. So
that's
that
phenomenal. My
yeah.
next door neighbor is a graphic artist, and she
Oh,
ended
that's
up
great.
doing the cover for me. And I remember seeing, well, when I was starting to write mine, I was working with a book coach. And this was her first kind of time around taking on clients to help them self-publish a book. So I got a very good rate, and she was kind of learning, and I certainly didn't know anything. So it was kind of a good scenario, someone to help point the way, because I really didn't know what to do and how to do it. She kind of kept me on task for a while. And one of the things she told me to do was to go to a bookstore and look at books in my genre. So I was looking at memoirs, and I was trying to find fitness memoirs or whatever, and look at covers. And she said, just start taking a look at things that you like, things that you don't like, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you could do that online too, but so I did that, and I would take pictures of ones that I liked, or I find them online, and I would start saving them, and they all the ones that I like came back to something very similar to what mine ended up being, is a picture of me on there, and then certain kinds of font and colors for the title and subtitle. And yeah, that part was quite a process, giving me homework to do. And it was interesting going there and actually seeing things that I don't like that, I like that. All that was really cool. Then I narrowed it down and sent it to my graphic artist. You're lucky enough to have someone who knows you pretty darn well, so you can probably not have to go back and forth quite as much.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering about the front cover as well. I was thinking, yeah, I'm probably gonna put a picture of me, but we'll see. Because yeah, it's like you said, I was thinking of just looking at other books within the genre that I really like as well. And and for example, I really like James Smith, his books, and yeah, I really like them. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but like something I noticed, and maybe I could ask him someday, is for his first two books, he put a picture of himself, but for his third one, he didn't. And I was like, I wonder why. Maybe there's a reason behind it, but just yeah, because obviously this is something that's been on my mind a lot. I am thinking about it, but I think I'm just gonna settle for a picture of myself because yeah, I think
I think for the first one,
yeah.
that's a really good idea, to
Yeah,
have you
yeah,
on the cover. Um, Maybe with James by number three, and maybe he's figuring people just kind of know what he looks like. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. True. Maybe. But yeah, I'm so excited to get a book out because
Yeah.
I've always had
Yeah.
it.
Where are you going to publish it?
I I'm just so obviously again, this is the first time I'm doing all of this, and you did like the only person that's really given me a breakdown of this is you. So we'll see. I'm assuming I don't really know how this works. Wherever I can, I guess um I'm assuming definitely Amazon, maybe my website if that's possible. I don't see why not. Potentially, I have some friends that work in like in they do they work in like stores in the UK, like supermarkets, like so like the
Hmm.
Walmart, for example, of the
Mm.
UK, and they're in like positions in which they kind of like I don't know if they help with where like what the store does and doesn't sell, but like they work in where like the products go in the store. So I was going to maybe talk to them and see if anything is possible there.
One thing I
We'll
would
see.
recommend is to look at because you can publish in different spots, right? Amazon obviously being a big one. But there's another one that's another big one called Ingram Spark. And when you publish with them, and I don't know, I mean, I know that's how it is over here. I don't know about UK, but here, when you publish with Ingram Spark, that's how you can get into bookstores here
Mm,
with through them. If you're not with them, you won't get into a bookstore just from Amazon. That's what I have found out. Um, so Ingram Spark would be another good publishing place to look into. And I am just on Amazon right now, so I'm not in any bookstores or anything like that. I may eventually put it on Ingram Spark just to see what happens, but um, the process for getting your book on Ingram Spark is not all that different than putting it on Amazon. You have to load it in. There's a bunch of things you have to do on the back end, but I could figure out most of it, so it can't be that hard.
mm. Is there a reason why you haven't done it yet, or it just didn't get
No, I
worked
mean,
out?
absolutely no reason. Zero. Other than when I don't know if I told you this when my book was first published on Amazon, I kind of wanted to do one thing at a time. And my graphic designer neighbor helped her dad publish a book about World War II. And so she was very familiar with Amazon's back end. So she literally sat with me and helped me set up Amazon account for my book and all that kind of stuff. So I was just focused on that. And technology makes me really nervous anyway. So I was kind of like, let me just do one thing at a time. And then right after it was published, I noticed, well, I got an email from some woman who said, I want you to listen to this and let me know what you think how I did with your book. And I'm like, what? So she had evidently been hired to record my book from somebody else. And it wasn't for me. And so when I wrote her back, she was like, you didn't authorize this? I said, no, I didn't authorize this. So I had to deal with that for a couple weeks. Somebody had hired somebody to do an audible for my book, an audiobook recording, which I had not done. And evidently this is a thing where if they find a book, a self-published book that does not have an audiobook attached to it already, that they would go ahead and hire it out to somebody so they can make money on it. And I saw it listed in Audible. The cover was different, everything else, but my name was there. And I had a couple people out on Instagram tell me that they actually bought it, you know, and it was this woman's voice. And she was mortified. She was apologetic. She had no idea. It wasn't her fault. Right. But she handed over all the whole recording stuff to me. So I have it. But anyway, I dealt with Audible and they had to take it down. So my mind was so on that. And I had such a sour taste in my mouth after that. I didn't want anything to do with anything else. I just didn't want to deal with it. You know, now that I'm thinking about doing the other book, and I've attended a couple of these book publishing seminars and things, I think I would probably go back and put my first book on Ingram Spark now, just to have it there too. And the second one will definitely go there.
Yeah, it makes sense. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so excited. One thing, Jordan and Mike, so for the listener, Jordan Sayat and Mike Vacanti, they're uh, two business mentors I'm working with right now. They did say when I mentioned, oh, I'm thinking of writing a book, should I go for it? They did say like, don't write a book to make money. Like no one makes
Yeah.
so like unless your book becomes like an absurd like bestseller, then chances are you're not going to make much money from it. But for me, it was always just for the enjoyment and maybe I would say even like having or forming a deeper connection with the reader. Hence the personal stories in there as well, because yeah, I think it just builds a
Yeah.
nice relationship, which I think is
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, switching gears, I thought, how was there anything else you wanted to say about the book before I move on?
No, no, no. It's
Yeah,
quite a process.
yeah, that's for sure. I can't wait to get it out. But yeah, how's the hip been healing up?
That's been a process too. Boy, it's been I mean, knock on, I've had zero problems. Zero. No pain from the time I woke up after surgery to today. You know, it's been crazy with that. Rehab has been super smooth. I literally did leg day yesterday and I'm about ready to deadlift 200 pounds again, you know? And I am not even, I'm about 4 months out of post-op,
Okay.
which is
And
kind of
uh,
crazy.
I was gonna say maybe for I just realized maybe for context, maybe the listener is wondering what happened to your hip. Maybe you could
Yeah,
quickly fill them in.
sure. So I had a hip replacement surgery on March 4th, and it was arthritic, you know, an arthritic hip that, you know, just comes from overuse over decades and just kind of bad luck too, with all of that. And so finally had the hip replacement surgery. And I had worked for a year prior to surgery on prepping for that because I knew it was coming. And I wanted it to come sooner than it actually did. But I spent that year, and Jordan was writing all my programming, and all my leg workouts for a year were single leg for an entire year. And I built strength and stability in my hip like nobody's business, even with an arthritic hip. I mean, I tell people I started with nothing. I started from no weight during this process and ended up moving some pretty decent weight. And the whole object of keeping things single leg was just to make that hip work as much as possible and really create a lot of stability and strength. And towards the end, like the last month, 2 months maybe before surgery, it was painful, you know, and I've never told anyone in my life to push through pain. But after talking to some doctors about my situation, this is one time I did, because I'm not going to make it any worse. you know, and I had to keeping it strong. I had to keep going with that. And that meant putting up with some pain in the process. Any other situation, not a great idea. And for me, pushing through pain on that, I'm not going to make it any worse because they're taking out the joint. It's not like I can make it any worse. I mean, it might feel worse for about a month, but once the surgery happens, I have a brand new joint. So it's not like I'm going to hurt anything. Because if there was an issue with that, I wouldn't have done it. So I put up with a lot the last couple months, kept that kind of quiet. But it was day to day was just a mess. It
Mm.
was just a mess. But all of the work for the year was what made my rehab so smooth and what is still making my rehab so smooth. Without a doubt, it has been smooth. I've had no issues whatsoever. And yeah, easier than a colonoscopy, easier than when I had my tonsils out when I was 40. I mean, this was one of the easiest things I think I've ever done. And I think it's because of all the blood, sweat, and tears I did before.
Yeah, so yeah, wow, like that's a lot. I remember watching your stories throughout, or you explaining it, or maybe whether it was on podcast episodes, and uh, and yeah, I was so happy for you when by the time you got the hip replacement because
Yeah.
no one wants to see someone else going through like just a daily pain. So I'm so happy that's in the past now. So leading up to the hip replacement, you were doing a lot of single leg work. Um, I'm assuming like I think it could be quite interesting for the listeners. So maybe we could speak about training with an injury, maybe not as like I want to say maybe not as like as painful as maybe what was happening in your case, but maybe just a general injury because when you're strength training, injuries are going to happen at some point, and what could be a good idea to maybe how to approach your training throughout that period because one thing you
Yeah.
said was you don't usually tell people to push through pain. Um, so what would you maybe suggest instead? Let's say someone's knee is just playing up for a little while and it's nothing too severe, but yeah, it's just there's something there.
I tell everyone this. I think if you have a nagging injury, knee, shoulder, hip, whatever it is, get it seen by somebody who can really watch you move and get an idea of what it is that's happening. Because I think without that, you're kind of shooting in the dark, you know? You don't quite know if what you're doing is going to actually help you or not. So even if it's nothing major, I would always recommend getting it checked out just so you know, and then you can kind of get an action plan from a PT or something like that, and then start there. But I think with any injury, the real important thing to remember here is that I think most injuries are not huge. They're not a big deal. They're nagging, they're annoying, they piss you off, all the things. And they don't feel good, obviously. But most of them are not going to be life changing or anything like that, which is great. But it plays with your head when you're injured, especially when you love to go to the gym and you love to lift and you've been making a lot of progress and you feel like you're in a groove. And now all of a sudden your knee hurts or your shoulder's acting up. And all you can think about is the things you can't do, and when you start going down that road, you're like in a downward spiral. Not only are your workouts going to go to hell in a handbasket, but my guess is you're going to see your nutrition start to suffer too, because it's going to be a whole lot of what's the point? I can't do anything. I'm going to start gaining the weight back. I'm going to start losing all my strength, all my muscle, all the things, right? And so being more active in the process while you're injured is super important because it's going to help make you feel like you're progressing, which you can. And I'm a huge proponent of when you are injured, find what you can do without pain. Find it because it's there. It doesn't matter what your injury is. There's always something you can do. And the thing is, it may not look like what your other workout prior looked like. It may not look anything like that. That's okay. That's okay. But you need to find the exercises that you can do. And that actually means going to the gym and testing some. Go through your program one exercise at a time. What does this feel like when I do it? If there is sharp pain, that's a no go. Boom, you're done with that one. We need to find an alternative. If you have a little discomfort, most docs would probably tell you that a little discomfort's not a bad thing, but you can consult with your doctor on things like that just to get the definitive on that. But mostly discomfort is not bad, but pain is bad, and that's where you call a halt, right? And then it might be a matter of you change what you do. Like if it's your shoulders and you're bench pressing, don't use a barbell, try dumbbells. And then instead of putting your palms face away, try bringing the palms like this. You can bench press like this. I did it all the time when my shoulder hurt, or do a 45-degree angle instead of out like that where your shoulders hurt. And with a knee, you don't have to do a full walking lunge. For God's sakes, that's one of the more advanced versions of a lunge anyway. And most people aren't necessarily performing them correctly. So they are going to be kind of tough on your knee. But maybe if you do a static lunge or a split squat and hold on to something for a little more stability and work a moderate range of motion instead of a big range of motion, work your way up that way. There's always ways to change things around and keep progressing. And the good thing about that, and probably one of the most important, is your head's going to be back in the game, right? You are still going to be progressing. You can get strong with those exercises. And once you do that, your mindset is going to start to shift. I mean, all the positives are going to happen. So I think it's really important to not focus on what you can't do temporarily, but focus on what you can do and get stronger there.
There is so much, there's so much I wanted to say, like, oh, I want to say on the back of what you've just said, because yeah, I think you've really nailed it, first of all. Um, and for example, yeah, I think what you said about going to a physiotherapist, when if you have like a persisting injury that keeps coming back, then yeah, really, I think a physiotherapist is a really good idea. And it took me back to when I was a teenager, and I had like a nagging shoulder injury, but I didn't get it checked. I was just at
Mm.
the time I didn't know much. It was like around the time when I first started at the gym, not too long after, and I had like really bad form on the dumbbell bench press and ended up injuring my shoulder. Didn't get it checked out because at the time I was just like, oh, it'll just go away by itself. A month passed, 2 months passed, 4 months passed. Eventually, I went to a doctor who just kept sending me back and forth, and then eventually I realized, oh, doctors they do a lot, but they only know so much about certain things, especially when it comes to sports related injuries. That's what I
Hmm.
learned after, because I was going back and forth between like the NHS and doctors, which the NHS is the National Health Service in the UK. And I was like, this is not getting better. I even had a cortisol shot, didn't do anything. Literally the next day the pain persisted. And I was like, you know what? I can't remember why I decided this or where it came from, because at that time I thought it was a doctor who would help me. Then I was like, I'm just going to try a physiotherapist. And after going back and forth for 2 years, the physiotherapist fixed me off in 2 months. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, and I learned so much there. Even he showed me a bunch, and I was like, that's just wow. Like that, it was a massive experience for me at the time, and definitely something I carry with me today as well. And my one-to-one online fitness members that I work with, and people that I come across. And then and what you were saying as well about, so I wish, yeah, I wish before moving on, I wish I did go to a physiotherapist sooner, and I always do recommend that. And then what you were saying about making, exercise adjustments. For example, my shoulder had been playing up again recently, like 10 years later. It was different. Um, but yeah, it was just playing up in the gym. I didn't really know what was going on. It was nothing too severe, but it was definitely something was there. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to make some slight adjustments in a few exercises. So like I've heard you say it before, I say the same. It's not about like working out through your injury, generally speaking, most of the time. It's
Hmm.
trying to work around it and seeing what you can do, and maybe taking out some time to figure out what you can do, and then making those adjustments there, and progressing from there. And I was like, okay, so I can do dumbbell bench presses, but it's the barbell that makes my shoulder plays up, and then it's the barbell overhead press that's also contributing to that feeling that's it's not feeling very good right now. So what I did, just switched to the dumbbell bench press, started doing kettlebell exercises on my shoulder for my shoulder instead of the barbell overhead press, which by the way ended up working wonders for me, and I think it ended up helping my shoulder heal. So yeah, there's just like a lot that can still be done. And I think what you said, it's a common mistake where sometimes people just stop entirely because they can't
Hmm.
train the same way they could before. Whereas it's like, oh, hold on, there's actually a lot that we can still do here. And
Yeah.
it's about finding out what we can do.
I think I had I call him my movement doc locally that I go to see here when things kind of flare up. And he told me once, The worst thing you can do if with any injury is just stop, and quote, rest it, unquote. You don't have to stop in order to rest an injury or give it a chance to breathe a little bit. And the reason he said that's the worst thing you can do is because if you have a shoulder injury, let's say, and you rest the shoulder and literally don't do anything, you're not moving your joint either. And there lies the problem. Like let's say it's a rotator issue, um, whatever the issue is, you're resting that, but your joint's not getting any action now. So now you have two issues. You have the original issue, whatever the injury is, and then you have a joint that is now stiff and hasn't been worked in a long time. And that means now that you have two things you got to work with instead of just the one. Whereas if you were just to continue working out and finding other upper body exercises you can do that your shoulder will allow you to do, you are moving the joint, you are getting some blood flow and oxygen to the area, which is how we heal. We need that. And now we're kind of speeding up the process. You know, it's not going to be fast, but we're helping the process along. And I think finding those exercises is where people kind of go, I don't know what to do. And this is how a coach could help you, obviously, or if you're in a group or whatever, getting some guidance with that from your PT, whatever it is. But take the bull by the horns and don't skip a workout day. You know, if you have a shoulder injury, you don't skip upper body days. You go and you find what you can do. And maybe all you can do on an upper body day is pull. You could row with a dumbbell. You could do a cable row. Whatever it is, do those two exercises. Whatever you can do them. And like I said, it's not really what's on your program, but it's something that you can still progress with and get stronger with. And that will help keep your mindset intact. You know, you won't kind of start to spiral down that black hole.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the fact that you mentioned that black hole, it's, I think a lot of, this is something I've been paying more attention to in the last few years. I think one of those overlooked, maybe one of the more overlooked aspects when it comes to an injury is just the psychological aspect as well. And yeah, I think that's the tough part is that, and just as me personally speaking now, sometimes I'll find that, okay, like I'm better now, but am I like, because you start to question it in your head, because after like being a little bit careful with it for so long, you start getting worried about aggravating it or whether
Mm-hmm.
it's ready. And even though like physically, yeah, you might actually be ready, I think psychologically sometimes there's that part where you're a little bit worried about pushing yourself as well. Do you feel like you had that with the hip or not at all?
No, to be honest with you, I don't think I used to think like that back in the day, but I've been through nagging injuries with my shoulders and my hip, and obviously the big one with my hip. I'm not worried about making my hip worse. The only thing I'm hesitant with my hip, and I'm still only at 4 months post-op, right? And I think this will even get less, is getting back to jujitsu. I'm hesitant with that. I feel like I could do that right now. I mean, because I feel normal. And I'm going to jujitsu class today to watch. I've been going to my class once a week just to keep watching what's going on, to keep me my head kind of in the game. Um, but with jujitsu, it is very hip dominant. Your hip is going through a lot. And I am just really concerned that un without my control, that if I'm sparring, let's say I get into a crazy position and my hip gets stuck or something, so I've kind of thought regarding that, I'm going to approach it. I'm probably going to start in a month privately with my instructor one-on-one, and all we're going to do is drills just to see what I can do and what I can't do. We're going to test it. That's kind of what it's going to be like. And then I've kind of, after watching class a lot and thinking, you know what, I don't know if I'm ever going to be comfortable sparring again. I don't know, just because that's not as controlled as a drill session, and I don't know if that is worth the risk with my hip, to be honest with you. My doc was kind of like about doing it at all. He was not necessarily. He was just very hesitant. But I'm still going, so I can I'm still been learning, so I feel like I'm not too much out of the loop. But I am going to try it. with the gym, I haven't been hesitant at all, to be honest with you. It's been interesting the feeling, the difference between the two hips, right? It's insane, and it really pops out on single leg RDL stuff. That movement alone, when I first got that movement as homework in rehab, I couldn't. I mean, it was obviously with no weight. I could barely even do a little bit of rotation on the right side at all, hardly at all. I had to hold on to something, whereas the left side was just autopilot. The right side took a while, and then it became I could move it with no weight, but the range of motion was still tough, but I could move it, and it loosened up. And so, and then I weighted it. And so now I'm weighting it with 30 pounds and I'm being able to move it. Okay. I mean, it's tough, but it's the slow rebuild from zero, literally zero. And this is the cool thing. There's nothing really cool about being injured, but if there was one, it would be the rebuild process is so much fun.
Mhm.
I feel like there's no pressure on me whatsoever anymore. I see gains all the time. And when you're rehabbing a hip like this, I saw progress every single day in something. And that is, if you want to see something that lights a fire, that will do it. When you do these rehab exercises and the next day you can do 3 more reps than you could the day before, or you can use a little bit more weight. I mean, it's really cool to see all that, because you're one thing that, as you were saying, it's not talked about a lot, is the mental aspect of this. And my confidence I never really realized it, but my confidence with everything had been shattered for the last 2 years. And when you live through that, you really don't understand what's exactly happening until I look back on it now and think, oh my God. I mean, my upper body stuff sucked for that period of time too. I had no confidence in what I was doing, no confidence in anything, not even non-fitness related. It was really a big blow to me that I didn't even realize was happening while I was in it. So being on the other side and now rebuilding everything has been just like such joy to me.
It's like I said, the psychology side of things.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
just so
huge.
yeah. And I think that's the part that many people forget because sometimes we get so focused on how we're physically feeling.
Yeah,
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 injuries can just really take a toll on the mindset as well, like, especially when you're so used to moving your body already,
yeah.
um, or like on a daily basis. And I think there was actually something I was going to bring up because there was a brief interaction I was having on social media the other day as well. And I think it's a really quite an important point to mention is that someone was mentioning they were potentially getting a hip replacement soon. And they've been doing like classes for like 10 years and they were delaying that hip replacement because they didn't want to stop doing the classes and that they'll do it soon and then get back to the classes or something like that. But I think this isn't what I'm about to say isn't necessarily just for a hip replacement. I think it's for injuries in general. I would say like, you know what, probably in these types of cases when when you've got an injury that you're trying to manage or you're trying to work out around it, figure out what you can do, I probably wouldn't recommend going to classes. I would, and I know for some people that might be quite tough because maybe some people love classes and they love going to that. But I think that's a time where you really want to have something more tailored to you because what you have or what someone is going through with that injury is it's a very specific to you thing. So I think if you can get a one-on-one type of thing, like generally speaking, during that time, it's a really, I think, important thing to seek.
I totally agree. I think it's not a knock on classes. I mean, by any stretch, and I know you don't mean that. It is because classes are not set up to tailor to you, right? Sometimes these classes have 20 people in there and one instructor. That instructor cannot possibly modify an exercise for you with 20 other people in that room. That's not their job, right? Um, and so if you don't know how to modify for yourself, I think you could be asking for a little bit of trouble, unbeknownst to you. Just that you might be doing things that are probably not a great idea for you with your injury, just depends. So yeah, I would definitely proceed with caution. And I think, something definitely more tailored, and someone working with you up until your surgery, I think is a great idea. I mean, Jordan's been doing all my programming, but we sat for years and years, but we sat down and really talked about the best way to approach this for me. And we both thought the single leg emphasis on legs would be the best thing I could do for my hip, and we were right. I mean, it was absolutely the best thing that I ever could have done, um, and a lot of time to work on that. I think I had a year, give or
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think everything you said is so well said, in regard to, yeah. Classes definitely have, their place. They can have their advantages as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
during a time like that, and then imagine if, five other people in your class have an injury as well, then it's like, the instructor is just going to have a really hard time for what is meant to be a group
yeah.
exercise session. Was there anything else you wanted to add onto everything we've said until now before I go into the final thing?
I just want to say one other thing that popped up with my hip, which not surprising if you think about it, but it's surprised some people on social media, to be honest. And that is, I don't like to walk, and there's a whole, walking is like the thing. It has had the major resurgence and popularity that it should have had all along. Um, and I am not one that likes it. Everyone's talking about, oh, how they love getting outside and walking. I hate it. I shouldn't say I hate it. I don't hate it now, but I really didn't like it because every time I would walk, it would hurt within a minute or two, So I kind of associate walking with pain. After a year or more of this, and it was so frustrating because I know how good it is. I know I should be doing it, all the things, but my God, within 2 minutes it starts hurting. This is not fun. I don't care what the weather's like. It's not fun, you know? So I resorted to before my hip, I would resort to being on the elliptical. That thing was magic for me. Absolute magic. After a leg day, when my hip was sore, I would hop on the elliptical for 30 minutes and just gently glide. And oh, it was like oiling the joint, it just felt great. And for a while, for most of the time, I have a spin bike here at home. I could get on my spin bike and do classes and stuff. So I got the movement in. I just didn't walk, And so now my goal is post surgery is let me get used to walking. Let me see if I can even like it again, and I'm in the middle of that process right now. Like I can walk, and for the most part, I can walk fine, and I don't feel it at all. Um, and with the summer and the nice weather, and I love the heat, so I'll go outside in the heat. I don't care. Um, I challenge myself to walk every day. I want to start my day every morning with a short walk, not like a super long walk, just to kind of wake up. And I have been 100% on that for about 3 weeks now. Um, and I've had to drag my ass to do it on a couple days, which I didn't want to do, but I've stuck to it. And I don't want to say I like it yet, but I am heading in that direction. So I feel like I'm getting over the post-traumatic stress of before surgery, of it being so painful. And it was interesting. Just today, I did notice I was walking faster because I just wanted to get it over with. you know? And yeah, my hip doesn't like that at all. I started feeling it up in my hip flexor. So now I know where my speed is, that I can handle distance at a certain speed without any problem at all. So 4 months out of surgery, I'm still learning, and adjusting. Yeah. So, but I'm trying to get back on the walk train, and I think I'm getting there.
No, yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, sometimes it just shows as well those small things that we take for advantage every
Yeah.
day because we don't have to think twice about it.
Yep.
It's just one of those things where all of a sudden when it becomes more challenging or we can't do it or it causes us pain, that's when we really start to appreciate
Yeah. I,
what.
I will never be the person ever that will love to walk when it's freezing cold outside. That's not in my DNA. I
Oh
will
yeah, yeah, yeah,
never be
yeah.
that person. But aside from that, I mean, I have a walking pad here, so I would rather walk on my walking pad than go outside when it's freezing cold, and I have everyone always DMing me saying, "Oh, but just bundle up. It feels so good." No, it does not feel good.
No,
Ow.
yeah, no, no.
I'll walk inside. Thanks.
Yeah. I can relate. Have you been to Vermont?
No,
Oh,
no,
that
I've
place
never
is,
been to Vermont.
yeah, it's freezing in the winter. I'm sure like a
Uh,
lot of New England is
yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I did an exchange year when I was in college in
Mm.
Scandinavia, and I had never experienced cold like that. I remember I'll never forget one day getting a text from a friend of mine. They were like, "Let's come and hang." And I was like, I remember thinking, if this place is over 5 minutes away, I'm not gonna go. And it was like
Yeah.
it was 6 minutes, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going.
And
Like,
I'm not going.
no,
I
it's too
drew the
cold. I
line.
don't. Yeah, it's like it's just too cold. I don't care about like having. Yeah, yeah. So I can 100% relate.
Well, get a load of this. We're heading to Germany in December for the Christmas markets. We're
Oh
going to go
no.
Christmas market hopping. Yeah, and I saw average temp is maybe 40 Fahrenheit over there. I don't know what that is for you all, but it's pretty cold, it looks like. So not
Yeah.
only do I need to have good walking shoes because we'll be doing a lot of walking, but I got to figure out how to dress so I'm not miserable.
No, that's gonna be you're gonna have so much fun that maybe it'll take your mind off the
Yeah,
cold
I
weather,
think so.
which
I
I
think
think
so.
yeah. For the listener, I think 40 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit is about yeah, it's probably like mid like maybe about 5 Celsius. That's a wild guess, but I reckon I'm not far off. Was there anything else you wanted to add before I go into the final and brief part of this
No,
podcast
no,
episode?
it's good.
Okay, so I thought maybe before we could finish, we could do like a quick round of overrated or underrated. I haven't done this for a long time, but
Okay.
I was looking at our Road Odd podcast episode, and I was like, oh, I used to do that a lot when I'd have a guest on, and it's really good. I think just yeah. So anyway, let's get stuck in. So or you can say properly rated, and give as much or as little detail as you want. So fitness and non-fitness related. Say the first one, massage guns.
Oh, uh, um, you said over or underrated. Oh,
Yeah,
overrated. Like,
yeah,
get rid of them.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I have, and I'm biased to be honest with you because, and part of my hip rehab, my first PT took one of those massage guns to my hip and on down the hip, and I almost punched her. Literally, I went like this, and I said, "Stop." It hurt so bad. And I had tried one before unrelated to the hip. I'm like, who likes this? Like, I just think they're completely overrated.
yeah. I
Sorry.
remember there was a massive trend with them. I think back in 2020, around that time, 2021. Seems like they've died down now.
Thank
Um,
God.
yeah, I agree. I don't think they did much at all.
Oh,
Reality TV shows.
you know, probably going to say they're overrated. However, some of them suck you in. So there's got to be a little point of properly rated, maybe. And it's almost like a train wreck that you can't stop watching. It's really bizarre. Like I got caught up in this happened right after I had my hip out. Um, and I was literally in bed a lot that first week. Love is Blind. I just got sucked into that. That is the most ridiculous show I think I've ever seen, but I got sucked into it.
Yeah, yeah. I would. I know 100% what you mean. I was yeah, because usually I'm like, "Oh, this is just rubbish TV. I don't want to watch this," and I haven't watched any for a long time. And then a friend of mine, because I've been studying Japanese for a while now, and a friend of mine who's fluent in Japanese, who just taught himself the language, was like, I would recommend reality TV shows. And I was like, all right, I'll give
Oh,
it a chance. So I watched one. It was like called Terrace House, and it was yeah, and it's quite popular in Japan. And I watched it, and I was like, oh, like this is actually fun. And you do, and before you know it, you're like, oh my God, you start to care about these little things
yep,
that
yep.
don't
You
really
start caring
matter.
about it. It's crazy. And what a great idea to learn the language.
Yeah, because that's how they speak. Because when you learn
Yeah.
like from YouTube or courses, you're learning like the formal way, which is
Yeah.
good as well. And
Yeah.
but you learn in a way where people don't really speak like that on a day-to-day basis. Whereas if you're watching a reality TV show, you're like, oh wow, this is how people really interact, and you start to hear all these like nuances and maybe even slang terms that people might use or and different accents, which it exposes you to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a light bulb moment as well for me.
Yeah. That's
I need to get
great.
back into it. Um, Organic food.
Oh, completely overrated. I can't remember the last time I bought anything organic.
Yeah.
It's everything's going to have some level of pesticides. If anybody thinks that organic's better for you, I think they're being misled entirely. It's not more nutritious. It's not going to help you lose weight or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You can save your money. and not buy it and be fine. Or if you want to do organic for some reason, you like organic, that's fine too, right? But just don't think that it's better then, because it's really not.
Yeah, I think yeah, it gets massively put on a pedestal sometimes. And I think I said that once on Threads not too long ago, the social media platform, and some people got quite upset, but I was like, it's
I'm
true.
sure. Yeah,
It does, it seems like one people get quite mad about. Running for fat loss.
running for fat loss.
Yeah, specifically for fat loss.
Um, I think I think it's overrated. I remember vividly a runner telling me um, that running would do the trick, right? It would change your shape. And the problem with me, because I did a stint as a runner years and years ago, you know, running made me hungry, really hungry. And so, you go to these post race celebrations, right? And, you ran a 10K, but you ate like you ran a marathon, you know? And so that kind of cycle continued. I, I think we need to separate nutrition and exercise and have a separate relationship with each and understand what each is responsible for. And running is going to be great for your heart, and great for your mind too. That can be just a great decompress time for people. Um, Muscular endurance, all those kinds of things. And nutrition's where you're going to see the change, as far as how you look and stuff. Without nutrition, it's going to be an impossible task. And oftentimes we want training to be the driver of fat loss when really it's nutrition that's the driver. So we work with our nutrition to lose weight and to keep healthy, and our relationship with exercise is to build muscle, build strength, or increase our heart health, all those kinds of things. Two separate relationships, and they do different things. I think we need to think of it that way.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, it's well said. Standing desks.
Standing desks, I think they're overrated, completely overrated. Um, I've never seen anything out there that says that this is a good way to go. I mean, standing for long periods of time is not good either, right? As is sitting for long periods of time, right? I think you're better off sitting at your desk doing your work so you can focus, not having to worry about tripping on a treadmill or something like, if you have one of those things going on top of everything else. And then standing up and taking breaks and standing up and moving, go walk around, come back, something like that, as opposed to being at a standing desk and adding a treadmill or even just standing up. I find that when people stand up as well, we tend to favor one side. We don't even think about it. Our weight's not evenly distributed when we stand. And that contributed, to be honest with you, with my hip issue. Not the thing, but it was just something that certainly didn't help it. So I just think that they're overrated, man. If just sitting at a desk with a good chair and then get up and walk around for a while, and then come back.
Yeah, I think you phrased it very well there. I've got nothing else to add. Otherwise, yeah, that's it from me today. Where can people find you if they want to stay in touch and they enjoy?
Mostly Instagram, Susan Niebergall Fitness. I'm there. YouTube, Susan Niebergall Fitness. And I put out 2 videos. I hadn't been on YouTube in a long while, and I came back to YouTube with 2 videos of my story about my hip replacement. So a one before my hip surgery and then one after my hip surgery. So people want to get a feel for what that was like. You can go see those over there. I have a podcast, The Strong and Lean at Any Age podcast. And yeah, I mean, Susan Niebergall Fitness, I'm there everywhere.
Yeah, all right, yeah, definitely go and check Susan's Instagram out and her YouTube out because I can assure you it's very good stuff. And otherwise, Susan, thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on and taking out the time. I know you're busy, but I appreciate that so much. And again, thank you so much for having that chat with me a few months ago about what I can, what you would suggest about the book. I appreciate that a lot because
Sure.
yeah, thank you.
It's
And
great seeing you. And thank you so much for having me back. This was a lot of fun.
yeah, it was. And if you're listening from Susan's side or you're a regular listener of the show, please do consider subscribing. Drop a 5-star review if you enjoy the listen, because it helps the podcast grow immensely. And otherwise, thank you. Susan, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you to the listener for checking out this episode.
Thank you.